In this story, an old violin found in an antique shop revives the lost melodies of the past with the touch of its owner. But these melodies tell only a specific story, the deepest desires and fears of the musician's soul. Each piece creates both a time journey and an emotional awakening. The person playing the violin finds a history and soul in every note. The Violin of Forgotten Melodies. In the heart of an aging town, where cobblestone streets whispered tales of yesteryear and autumn leaves danced in gentle spirals, stood Whitmore's Antiques. The shop resided in a Victorian building with weather-worn bricks and windows that gleamed like aged amber in the afternoon sun. Inside, time seemed to move differently, flowing like honey on a lazy summer day. Cindy Matthews found herself drawn to this peculiar shop on an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon. The autumn wind had guided her feet past her usual route home from the music school where she taught piano to young students. At 42, Cindy carried herself with a quiet grace, her silver-streaked dark hair always neatly tied back, and her gentle brown eyes holding a warmth that put her students at ease. The bell above the door chimed softly as Cindy stepped inside, her footsteps muffled by the thick Persian carpet that covered the wooden floor. The air held the comforting scent of old books, polished wood, and something indefinable, perhaps time itself. Dust motes danced in the slanted beams of sunlight that filtered through the tall windows, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. Mr. Whitmore, the proprietor, was a man who seemed as much a part of his shop as the antiques themselves. His silver hair and kind eyes spoke of wisdom gathered over decades, and the way he moved among his treasures suggested an intimate knowledge of every item's history. He acknowledged Cindy with a gentle nod, somehow knowing she needed space to explore on her own. The shop held countless curiosities, porcelain dolls with knowing smiles, ornate music boxes that held forgotten tunes, weathered globes showing borders long since changed, and delicate tea sets that had served countless conversations. But something else called to Cindy, a pull she couldn't explain, leading her deeper into the maze of shelves and display cases. In the furthest corner of the shop, partially hidden behind a tall grandfather clock, Cindy discovered an old violin case. Unlike the polished displays in the front of the shop, this case bore the honest wear of time, scuffed leather, tarnished clasps, and a patina that spoke of countless hands and years of use. The case rested on a shelf as if it had been waiting specifically for her. With careful movements, Cindy lifted the case and placed it on a nearby table. The clasps opened with a soft click that seemed to echo in the quiet shop. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, lay a violin that took her breath away. Its wood held a deep, rich color that seemed to shift in the light, somewhere between honey and mahogany. Fine golden lines traced patterns across its surface, like veins of precious metal in stone, but when Cindy blinked, they seemed to fade away. The violin scroll was carved with unusual detail, subtle patterns that suggested leaves and vines, so delicate they might have grown there naturally. A small marking near the bridge caught her eye, a symbol that resembled a musical note intertwined with a star, carved with remarkable precision. The strings, despite the violin's apparent age, looked new and gleamed like strands of starlight. Cindy had played violin in her youth, before focusing on piano. Her fingers remembered the feel of strings, the weight of a bow, the way music could flow directly from thought to sound without the mechanical intervention of piano keys. This violin awakened something in her that had long lain dormant, like a flower stirring at the first touch of spring. Mr. Whitmore approached quietly, his footsteps barely disturbing the peaceful atmosphere. He observed Cindy's fascination with a knowing look, as if he had been expecting this moment. When Cindy asked about the violin's history, he shared that it had arrived at his shop under curious circumstances. An elderly woman had brought it in one misty morning, saying only that it needed to find its rightful owner. She had refused payment and disappeared into the fog before he could ask more questions. The price tag attached to the case was surprisingly modest, as if the violin itself had decided its worth. Cindy found herself reaching for her wallet before she had consciously made the decision to purchase it. The transaction felt more like a formality, an acknowledgement of something that had already been decided by forces beyond their understanding. As Mr. Whitmore carefully wrapped the case in brown paper, the autumn sun broke through the clouds outside, sending warm light streaming through the shop windows. The dust motes in the air seemed to dance more energetically, and for a moment, Cindy thought she heard a faint melody, but when she listened more carefully, there was only the gentle tick of clocks and the rustle of paper. Leaving the shop with the violin case cradled in her arms, Cindy felt a subtle shift in the air around her. The familiar streets of her town seemed somehow different, more alive with possibility. The violin's weight against her side felt right, as if she had been missing something all these years without realizing it. The walk home took her past the park where golden leaves carpeted the ground. The wind whispered through the branches, creating a symphony of natural sounds that seemed to welcome the violin's presence. Cindy found herself humming a tune she didn't recognize, one that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her memories, though she was certain she had never heard it before. Cindy's apartment occupied the top floor of an old brownstone building, where morning light streamed through tall windows and the wooden floors creaked companionably beneath her feet. That evening, she placed the violin case on her kitchen table, preparing a cup of chamomile tea before examining her new treasure more thoroughly. The apartment held the comfortable atmosphere of a space well loved and lived in. Potted plants thrived on every windowsill, their leaves casting intricate shadows in the warm lamplight. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with sheet music and old novels, their spines forming a patchwork of colors and memories. An upright piano stood against one wall, its keys worn smooth from years of devoted use. As she sipped her tea, Cindy opened the violin case once more. In the gentle evening light, the instrument seemed to glow from within, the golden patterns in its wood more visible than before. The air in the apartment grew still, as if nature itself waited to hear what would happen next. With careful movements, Cindy lifted the violin from its velvet bed. The weight felt perfect in her hands, the wood warm to her touch as if it had been resting in sunlight rather than the shadowy corner of an antique shop. The bow, when she examined it, bore the same mysterious craftsmanship as the violin, subtle patterns worked into its length, catching the light as she turned it. Cindy positioned the violin under her chin, muscle memory from years ago guiding her movements. The first note she drew from the strings filled the apartment with a sound unlike anything she had heard before. It held the warmth of summer afternoons, the whisper of falling leaves, and something else, a depth of emotion that made her heart ache with a sweet, indefinable feeling. As she continued to play, letting her fingers find their way across the strings, a remarkable transformation began to occur. The late evening light in her apartment seemed to shift and soften, taking on the golden quality of a different time of day. The air filled with the scent of lilacs and fresh grass, though her windows were closed and winter approached. The melody that flowed from the violin came from somewhere deep within Cindy's memories, yet she knew she had never heard it before. It spoke of childhood summers spent climbing trees, of the bittersweet moment when she left home for university, of quiet victories and gentle sorrows that had shaped her life. Each note carried emotions so pure and true that tears gathered in her eyes. As she played, the walls of her apartment seemed to fade away. She found herself standing in a sun-dappled garden from her childhood, the one behind her grandmother's house where she had spent countless hours reading and dreaming. The feeling was not frightening but rather like stepping into a beloved memory. The violin's music had somehow made the past present, allowing her to experience it anew. In this garden of memory, Cindy saw details she had forgotten: the particular way light filtered through the old apple tree's leaves, the pattern of the stepping stones leading to the small pond, even the sound of distant church bells that used to ring every Sunday morning. The music wove these fragments together, creating a tapestry of remembered moments. But there was something more. Mixed with her own memories, Cindy began to perceive other stories, other lives. She caught glimpses of people she had never met, yet somehow knew: a young man practicing violin by candlelight in a room she didn't recognize, a woman in a Victorian dress performing for a rapt audience, a street musician bringing joy to passers-by on a snowy evening. These visions flowed one into another, carried by the music that continued to pour from the violin. Cindy realized that the instrument wasn't simply playing notes, it was telling stories, weaving together the experiences of all those who had held it before her. Each melody contained the hopes, dreams, and memories of its previous owners, preserved within the violin's wooden heart. The final note lingered in the air like the last ray of sunset. As the sound faded, Cindy found herself back in her apartment, though the atmosphere remained charged with magic. The clock on her wall showed that hours had passed, yet it had felt like mere moments. The tea on her table had grown cold, untouched. That night, as Cindy prepared for bed, the melodies continued to echo in her mind. Her dreams were filled with gentle music and shifting scenes from times long past. She slept more peacefully than she had in years, as if the violin's magic had somehow soothed not just her conscious mind but her very soul. In the morning, Cindy woke to find the violin case glowing softly in the early dawn light. The symbol near the bridge, the musical note intertwined with a star, seemed more pronounced than before, as if responding to its first night in its new home. She knew that this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would reveal not only the violin's secrets but also truths about herself she had yet to discover. The following days brought subtle changes to Cindy's life. Her morning routine remained the same: walking to the music school, teaching young students the fundamentals of piano, sharing in their small triumphs and encouraging them through their struggles. Yet everything seemed touched by a gentle magic that had entered her world along with the violin. Colors appeared more vivid, sounds held new depths, and she found herself noticing details that had always been present but somehow overlooked: the way sunlight created patterns on the classroom floor, the melodic quality of children's laughter, the complex harmonies in everyday street sounds. The violin had awakened something in her perception, as if she were experiencing the world through enhanced senses. In the evenings, Cindy would take out the violin and play. Each session brought new discoveries. She learned that different types of memories emerged depending on the melodies she chose. Gentle, flowing pieces revealed quiet, intimate moments, a child's first steps, a lover's whispered words, the peaceful silence of a winter morning. More dynamic tunes brought forth celebrations, achievements, moments of joy and triumph from lives long past. One particularly memorable evening, as autumn rain tapped against her windows, Cindy discovered something extraordinary. As she played a melody that felt ancient and mysterious, the violin revealed the story of its first owner. Through the music, she experienced the life of a craftsman in a small Italian village, centuries ago. She felt his dedication as he carefully selected the wood, his patience as he shaped each curve, and the love he poured into every detail of the violin's creation. The violin had been a gift for his daughter, a talented musician who filled their village with beautiful music. Cindy saw through the craftsman's eyes as the young woman performed at festivals, her music bringing joy to their community. The love between father and daughter resonated in every note, preserved within the violins would like amber holding a precious moment in time. As days turned into weeks, Cindy began to understand that the violin didn't simply play music, it created bridges between past and present, between one heart and another. Each person who had owned it had left their own emotional imprint, their hopes and dreams becoming part of its essence. When she played, she wasn't just making music, she was connecting with a continuous chain of human experiences that stretched back through time. The violin's influence extended beyond Cindy's private moments of music. Her piano students noticed a change in her teaching. She found new ways to help them connect with the music, encouraging them to feel the emotions behind the notes rather than simply playing the correct keys. Her youngest student, a shy girl named Sophie, began to blossom under this new approach, her hesitant playing transforming into something more confident and expressive. One afternoon, as Cindy worked with Sophie on a simple piece, she noticed Mr. Whitmore standing in the doorway of her classroom. The antique shop owner had an expression of quiet satisfaction on his face, as if confirming something he had long suspected. He nodded to Cindy and departed without a word, leaving her to wonder about the true extent of his knowledge regarding the violin's nature. That evening, Cindy made an important discovery. While playing a particularly moving piece, she realized that the violin wasn't just sharing others' memories, it was beginning to store her own. Her experiences, emotions, and memories were being woven into its magical tapestry, becoming part of the legacy it would one day pass on to future owners. This realization brought both joy and responsibility. Cindy understood that she was now part of something larger than herself, a keeper of memories and emotions that transcended time. The violin had chosen her not just as an owner but as a guardian of its growing collection of human experiences. As autumn deepened toward winter, Cindy's apartment became a sanctuary of music and memory. The violin's case now sat in a place of honor near her piano, and the two instruments seemed to complement each other perfectly, the piano grounding her in the present while the violin connected her to the past. Each evening's practice became a journey of discovery. Sometimes Cindy would find herself experiencing memories of concert halls in distant cities, feeling the nervous excitement of performers from different eras. Other times, she witnessed quiet moments of practice in humble rooms, where musicians worked tirelessly to perfect their craft. Each story added to her understanding of the violin's magic and its role in preserving the emotional heritage of those who had played it. As winter settled over the town, bringing short days and long, starlit nights, Cindy's relationship with the violin deepened. The instrument seemed to respond to the changing seasons, its music taking on new qualities that reflected the crystalline beauty of frost-covered mornings and the cozy warmth of fireside evenings. During this time, Cindy began to notice that the violin's magic extended beyond sharing memories. When she played for others, even briefly, the music seemed to touch something deep within them, awakening their own forgotten memories and emotions. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, once paused in the hallway while Cindy was practicing, tears flowing freely down her cheeks as the music reminded her of her childhood home in a distant country. The violin's influence was particularly strong at the music school. Cindy's students began bringing in stories of strange and wonderful dreams after their lessons, dreams filled with music and memories that seemed to come from other times and places. Sophie, her youngest student, spoke of dreaming about a girl her age practicing piano in a gaslit room, wearing clothes from another century. On the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, Cindy made a remarkable discovery. As snowflakes danced past her windows and the town settled into evening silence, she began to play a melody that came to her as naturally as breathing. The violin's response was extraordinary, the room filled with a soft, golden light, and the air shimmered with what looked like musical notes made visible. In this enchanted moment, Cindy experienced not just isolated memories but entire lifetimes of music. She saw how the violin had passed from hand to hand through the centuries, each owner adding their own chapter to its story. She witnessed moments of great joy and deep sorrow, celebrations and solitude, all connected by the thread of music that ran through human experience. There was the young violinist in Vienna who played in coffee houses, his music bringing warmth to cold winter evenings. The traveling musician who carried the violin across America during the Great Depression, sharing hope through melody when little else remained. The elderly teacher who taught generations of students, passing on not just technique but a love for music that transformed young lives. As the vision continued, Cindy realized that the violin wasn't just a keeper of memories, it was a guardian of the human spirit's capacity for beauty and resilience. Through wars and peace, through times of hardship and prosperity, it had continued to sing, preserving the essential experiences that made life meaningful. The snow continued to fall outside as Cindy played deep into the night. The violin's music filled her apartment with warmth that went beyond the physical, creating an atmosphere of timeless peace. She felt connected to every person who had ever held this instrument, their experiences and emotions flowing through her and into the music she created. In the days that followed, Cindy began to understand another aspect of the violin's magic. When she played for people who were troubled or sad, the music seemed to find exactly the memories they needed most, moments of joy, courage, or love that they had forgotten they possessed. It was as if the violin could reach into the vast library of human experience it contained and select precisely the right story to heal a wounded heart. This gift became particularly apparent when Cindy started volunteering at the local retirement home. The residents there responded to her music in extraordinary ways. Some who rarely spoke would suddenly share vivid memories of their youth. Others found comfort in melodies that reminded them of loved ones long gone. The violin's music created bridges not just between past and present, but between people who had grown isolated in their private worlds of memory. One remarkable afternoon, Cindy played for a resident named Edward, who had been withdrawn and unresponsive for months. As the music filled his room, his eyes focused and brightened. He began to speak of his time as a young man in Paris, where he had studied art and fallen in love. The violin's melody had somehow awakened these dormant memories, bringing color and life back into his world. The staff at the retirement home noticed the change in their residents after Cindy's visits. The atmosphere became lighter, more hopeful. People who had been strangers despite living together for years began to share stories and form connections. The violin's magic was subtle but profound, weaving new bonds between people even as it helped them reconnect with their own pasts. As winter progressed, Cindy found herself becoming more attuned to the violin's mysteries. She began to understand that its power wasn't just in the memories it contained, but in its ability to remind people of their own capacity for joy, creativity, and connection. Each time she played, she was not just making music, she was helping to keep alive the countless stories of human experience that the violin had gathered through its long journey through time. During these concerts, Cindy often noticed a soft glow emanating from the violin's mysterious symbol, visible only to her. The intensity of the glow seemed to correspond with the emotional impact of the music on her listeners. Sometimes, she caught glimpses of the memories her music awakened in others: first kisses, childhood laughter, tender goodbyes, and joyful reunions. One evening, while playing in the hospital's children's ward, Cindy witnessed something extraordinary. As she performed a gentle lullaby, the violin's music seemed to weave a tapestry of light around a young patient who hadn't smiled in weeks. The child's eyes brightened as the music transported her to happier times, and for the first time since her admission, she fell into a peaceful sleep, her dreams filled with healing memories. The staff began to notice patterns. Patients who heard Cindy's music seemed to recover more quickly, their spirits lifted by melodies that somehow knew exactly what each person needed to hear. The violin had become not just an instrument of music, but a source of healing, using its collected wisdom of human experience to offer comfort and hope where they were needed most. As spring bloomed into full flower, Cindy's understanding of the violin's purpose deepened even further. She realized that she wasn't just playing music or sharing memories, she was participating in an ancient and ongoing symphony, one that connected all human experiences through the language of melody and emotion. The violin began to show Cindy how to weave new memories into its collection. When she played, she could now consciously choose which emotions and experiences to preserve, adding to the instrument's vast library of human stories. She learned to capture moments of profound joy, quiet triumph, and gentle healing, knowing that these memories would one day serve to comfort and inspire others. During this time, Cindy noticed subtle changes in her own perception. She became more attuned to the emotional currents running through everyday life, the unspoken stories carried in a stranger's smile, the hidden courage in a student's struggle to master a difficult piece, the quiet love in a parent's patient presence during practice sessions. The violin's influence extended beyond individual moments of music. Cindy's students began to show an unusual ability to connect with others through their playing, as if they had inherited some small portion of the violin's gift for emotional resonance. Their recitals became something more than simple performances, they became moments of shared humanity, where music bridged the gaps between hearts and minds. One warm evening, as spring was turning to summer, Cindy received an unexpected visit from the elderly woman who had originally brought the violin to Mr. Whitmore's shop. She appeared at Cindy's door just as the sun was setting, her silver hair glowing in the last light of day. The woman explained that she had been the violin's previous guardian, and that she had known Cindy would be the next when she first sensed her presence in the town. The elderly woman shared stories of her time with the violin, speaking of the lives it had touched and the healing it had brought. She explained that each guardian added their own unique contribution to the violin's magic. Some had expanded its collection of memories, others had discovered new ways to share its healing power, and still others had helped it reach those who needed its magic most. Cindy learned that the violin was one of several magical instruments scattered throughout the world, each collecting and preserving different aspects of human experience. Together, they maintained a delicate balance, ensuring that the most profound and beautiful elements of human existence were never truly lost to time. As the evening deepened into night, the elderly woman told Cindy that her time with the violin would last as long as it was meant to, and that she would know when it was time to help the instrument find its next guardian. The woman departed as mysteriously as she had arrived, leaving Cindy with a deeper appreciation for her role in the violin's ongoing story. In the months that followed, Cindy continued to explore the violin's magic, discovering new depths to its power and purpose. She learned that every time she played, she was not just making music, she was maintaining vital connections between past and present, between memory and hope, between one human heart and another. The violin remained a source of wonder and discovery, its magic unfolding in new ways with each passing season. Cindy came to understand that she was part of something far larger than herself, a continuous chain of music and memory that stretched back through time and would continue long into the future. Each evening, as she played the violin in her apartment filled with the last light of day, Cindy felt profound gratitude for the gift she had been given. The violin had taught her that every life was a unique melody, and that together, these melodies formed an endless symphony of human experience, a song of joy and sorrow, triumph and struggle, love and loss, all woven together into something beautiful and eternal. And so the violin continued its journey through time, gathering stories, healing hearts, and weaving connections between souls. In Cindy's hands, it sang of remembered joys and forgotten dreams, of quiet courage and gentle love, its music a reminder that in the great symphony of life, every heart has its own special part to play.